element of my resume that wasn't on there, which is I also happen to be, I am a workforce professional that happens to lead a safety organization. I am not a safety expert. I am a people expert. And in that lens, I equally am a Gallup certified strengths coach. And I'm going to ask a couple questions, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it from polling. I'm actually going to walk the audience. And I did that this morning. And I tried to understand what it is you guys want to hear as it links to safety. And we started out with injuries in the workplace and fatalities. And at ASSP, our mission, we were founded in the roots of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, where individuals perished, families perished. The youngest was 14 in what is essentially a preventable incident. It's not rocket science, it's people science. And so is the skills gap. I've spent most of my career in this space, and it comes back to some of the same themes. So this morning I walked around and interacted with a couple of the participants to understand why are you in the room? And first and foremost, it was networking. I am confident in this room, collect as many connections as you can because somebody has solved the problem somewhere. The problem isn't solving the problem is scaling the problem and applying it in your lens. And that gets to the world of work is constantly changing. So when I think about, and I'm going to bump up the conversation, we are very focused in the talent side right now, but I'm going to bring it up to the business side. Can somebody share with me what the top challenges their organization, the company, is actually facing? Someone. And the people answer is the obvious one. Raise of hands.
Bailey Taylor with Venture Global. The biggest thing we're facing right now is we're growing so fast and we're building different plants. And so we're losing personnel from this plant that started the original plant to the other plant, and now we got another plant coming up. So we're losing talent. We're losing the experience at that one plant. And so it's just trying to maintain and try to keep the experience from the original startup to the next startup to the other startup is the biggest thing we're facing right now. We're not so much losing people to other competitors. We're losing people to other sites because we're growing so fast. So that's really our biggest challenge right now.
And that's expansion. Expansion and business performance has, I got a hand up over here, has an impact. Yes, sir.
Our biggest problem right now is the stigma of blue collar versus new collar work. We are absolutely a new collar facility, cutting edge engineering with that blue collar stigma. It's tough to get people in.
Yeah, having spent my entire career in middle skills, I am a lifetime member of the American Welding Society. I can't weld, that is an honor bestowed on me for that space. But I am the one that founded a Hallmark holiday called Manufacturing Day. If you don't know what that is, I encourage you to. But again, manufacturing today is not what it was before. It is a dynamic, technology-driven environment, and when you think about making a difference, the messaging you use around what you do and how people connect to that work is important. Okay, one more. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I think most of the companies here in Houston area are facing aging of assets. And it's always the struggle, should we fix these old assets or should we build a new facility? We are running into problems after problems after problems, and the conversation always, okay, just put it on hold, put that unit down for now. Well, we'll try to yield from the other units until we see how the market goes, and that can go on for years.
The skills gap is actually a governance issue for exactly what you said. So if you look at this from a research perspective, I'm a bit of a data wonk, and all the work that NIOSH, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, has done, there are sort of three components associated with the changing world of work: workplace, and workforce. That gets to everything you guys are talking about, the role of automation, not just in talent, but in business. I would add there is a couple other really important layers, and you see it right now, accelerated through COVID, which is the decision-making process in the boardroom has a direct impact on your success. Whether you realize that or not, it does, because it influences capital investment that leaves aged equipment out that takes decades to fill when you're expanding so fast you don't have the skills to solve it. So it is an ecosystem in what is your approach. And with all of the great ideas that you are hearing here today, I would counsel you to think about one thing. Which one is our biggest pain point? Because that's the door I'm going to go through. And I will use an example of LL Bean, former chair of my board, who is an occupational nurse, actually. She was my volunteer leader during COVID, and God bless her that I had an OC nurse in the middle of navigating what was going on in the front lines every single day when all of a sudden EHS professionals were worrying about contract tracing. But for LL Bean, they're headquartered in Maine. A lot of the work happens in Maine. What do you think's going on in Maine today? Think everyone's rushing there to live? No, is the answer. So everything about that aging workforce. Their focus was not solving a skills gap. It was solving a ecosystem in their community. Some of the answer to that is automation. Some of the answer to that was reworking of lines. Some of that was how work got done, back to the if their average retirement age before had been 50 and all of a sudden everyone was 60, then what you can carry is different. So back up your lens to a business environment when you're thinking about what you're learning here, because every one of your doors is going to be different. And everything that you learn is going to help you build the case for what door you want to go in. Okay, so that's the company challenges, and everything is validated. Pace of change, supply chain disruptions, anybody impacted by the tariffs that happened? There's all sorts of things that get to, and every year I do a corporate listening tour at the front end of the year to kind of hear what's going on in business across multiple sectors. And one of the CEOs, after today I'm going to have to call him, I shared this with my table. He said to me, well, I always bid on a job asking the question of how many strikes I have against me. Anybody got a guess as to what that might mean? How many strikes? Because 3 strikes and you're out, right? Okay, strike number 1 is cost. If I'm bidding on a job and they're not going to negotiate on cost, it's going to be an indicator, right? Anybody got an idea on what number 2 might be? Time. Bingo. Cost and time. And if you're not going to negotiate on cost and you're not going to negotiate on time, what's going to sacrifice? Quality, people, safety, everything else. The one theme that is coming out of my listening tour is it is the expansion. It's expansion to acquisition. It is transition of work, and it is unpredictability of planning. What happens when you can't plan? Chaos, right? We, in the standards development world, have a conversation. We have a statement that is called work as designed. Somebody used the word utopia. That is my utopia. Work as performed. Is there a gap there? Yeah, there is. What kind of gap exists?
Because things are moving so fast, it's hard to even make good estimates for capital projects or anticipate what your workforce is going to be, who's going to be available, what skills they're going to have. So yeah, your work is designed means that your work is your best guess, and your performance may not meet that.
Yeah. So I don't mean to be doggy downer, but the one constant is change. So how do you build a resilient workforce in a time in which the only predictable is change? And does anybody have an idea what % of your workforce doesn't like change? Okay, I got 100 here, and I got some chuckles. Somebody that was chuckling. Do people like change? No. And in fact, 80% of your workforce, there are 20% that are crazy like me. So yeah, I have to regulate that every single day. But 20% don't like change. So what does that mean? Your responsibility in the talent space is to help them through. Help them through. And that was actually talked about earlier in terms of not just the application of information, but feeling valued in the workforce. So I'm skipping right past the polling because this didn't work. So when we talk about the dynamics and the ecosystem that you guys are operating in, it is the talent pool, it is the shortages, it is the technology acceleration, it is new expectations for work, and it is turnovers and retirements. It is all of those things that impact operations. I will add to it, when you look at constants in this space, certainly I hear this a lot in the utilities, a lot in the energy space. It's also things like climate change and disruptions. Houston, how many times have I seen you guys on the news? No offense, but I'm not buying a piece of property here because I don't know what's coming your direction. But again, where there are shutdowns, and you guys are all systems thinkers, right? You're in manufacturing. You're a plan, do, check, act environment. I see lots of heads nodding. How many, you do one of those really well, right? Do you do 10 simultaneously as well? Think about it that way. Your responsibility in the talent side is to navigate through, because the disruption can be not just a weather incident, it can be a supply chain delay. It can be a capital investment that the board can't seem to make a decision on because they're uncertain about what the market's going to do today. Therefore, the capital investment and putting and banding it together, even though they know it's a maintenance issue, can come into play. So why does it matter? I hate to say this, but to those to that 80% that don't want it, it's time to reframe that change is. From a workforce perspective, why do you think this is so hard in job training? I'm looking at my community college partners over here. Why is this hard, do you think? I'll give you the answer. How's that? Thank you. I won't put you on the spot, but clearly I'm a speaker that puts you on the spot. So we have an entire public education system, and let's go back to the tap and the hammer, that was built on education being a destination and not a journey. And in fact, today, we celebrate kindergarten. Do we not? Any grandparents in the room? Did you go to your grandchild's graduation from kindergarten? But you will be there. So we have fundamentally a culture built that completion of knowledge is a destination that you then step off stage and celebrate. Is that the reality of the world of work? Okay, so how does training and education fit into the culture of your company is one of the change management things. Back to the comment of building skills and capabilities. Every organization is going to do that differently. Whether you do that with apprenticeship programs or on-the-job training or mentorships, or you bring in the contract consultant, or you build it your same, or you give it to somebody on an iPad, it is a cultural mentality to build knowledge and skills. So how within your culture do you value those knowledge and skills? And again, why does it matter? Forces that are shaping it, and every one of your pain points could be different. If it's the role that automation plays, and I love the idea of your closed language model. ASSP actually just yesterday announced a partnership with Avetta in which we're taking our body of knowledge, you know, we're techno-wonks, engineers, and putting it into people's frontline systems. So they don't need to question where good safety information comes from. It's going to look different in your facility, balanced with your information, but that's the direction we need to head with the next generation. They're not going to wait for an answer. I hate to say that. They won't. They want to know the answer now, and they want it on their phone. And they want it in an environment that they're touching. And that's a piece of actually what sells manufacturing, is the ability to pull them in because it's a highly automated environment. And not every facility is. I get it. I've walked a lot of floors. But there's a message to be had in how you recruit around the experiences that that generation expects. and how you design work out. Now, one of the things I loved about Manufacturing Day and having walked through a lot of floors was the ability for somebody to come in and see what we did. And that actually links to purpose and value. How many of you talk about your company from a value set and what value it delivers? I see a head nodding. Do you, sir? Does your company talk about the values? Do you mind sharing? I am, because your head was nodding. Values. I was just nodding off. Good. I love your honesty. Values. Do you guys talk about what you do and why someone wants to be a part of that team?
Well, why it's important, what our contribution as far as products, you know, and how important those are.
Yeah.
In everyday life, that's part of what new employees get.
Yeah. That connection to what you do is a critical component. We power the world. I get to wake up every day and worry about saving lives. I may never see those people that I'm helping, but I have a noble purpose. When you think about human behavior and all the research that exists around Gallup, there are sort of three big buckets to put back into that framing around culture. What I get, that's number one bucket. Number two, what I give, that's what I bring to the table. And number three, how we grow. The top of the pyramid is that link to mission. And Gallup has a hierarchy. You can look it up. It's under their Gallup Q12. But question number one is, do I know what's expected of me? If you looked at the workforce you support, could they clearly articulate at every single level what's expected of them? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Let's go back to the discussion we had around the managers and whether or not those managers were great technicians or great people persons. People. We need more coaches. How do we build coaching capability? Number one. Number two is, do I have the tools and resources I need to do my job? One of the biggest issues, back to those 3 strikes and I'm out, is if time and cost are not going to be compromised, something else is. What is it in the business process? And we talk about things like stop work authority and everything else, but it is the culture and the microcosm of that work that decides whether or not somebody's psychologically safe to do that. We also know that the dynamics are changing. As automation kicks in, roles change, expectations change. Actually, you shared, is the pipe going to be the same tomorrow? High probability in some cases, yes. In most cases, no. Because what I know about business and boardrooms is they are resilient and results-oriented. Does that sound right? So they will make decisions that are going to ensure business success. So make the talent what is the biggest part of that equation, part of it, because there's going to continue to be a lot of turnover. So when I looked at the incident rates that were the incidences, not the fatalities, that number I know well, you know, there's also a huge skills gap, and there has been in manufacturing in almost every one of the sectors of our economy. So you are not just competing with manufacturing and moving talent around. I used to call it the 4 nickel more methodology. But in the end, what those jobs are going to look like are changing. So the partnerships that you have at the community college level, the way in which you designed culture to make people want to stay, to make people care about each other. That's what human capital and workforce development and talent is. It is not a training, it is a people-centered mindset that goes from the top of the organization to the bottom. Because if you look at culture and care, and someone on this side of the room mentioned recognition earlier. Why does recognition matter for a team member? It was in the context of promotion, and do we promote? Do we give money? Do we give recognition? Yes, sir. Was that you earlier?
Yeah, I mentioned it.
Yes, please. Why does recognition matter?
I think what we found was that I don't know why it matters, but it seems to matter. And so one of the things that we did was when so we put in a program of communication. So we have different plants, different terminals. They're all around the world, and we found that people were doing good things and not really. One plant may not have known what the other plant was doing, and they could have benefited from it. And what we found was that by recognizing the people who did, say, a good project, and it was simply by sort of, giving them an award or putting their name on a plaque, and it's at all the plants, that you really helped get people talking. And I mean, for us, it's sort of worked really well. It went from like about 3 plants, now we have I think 7 or 8 plants involved, and so I think that worked really well. So it's a program that I started, so and it wasn't getting much traction until that recognition piece. So,
And here's why it matters.
okay.
Because nobody shows up at work to fail, and people want to know they're doing a good job. It is a reinforcement back. If you actually looked at the life cycle of an employee from a plan, do, check, act component, first we get them on board, then we teach them what they're doing. That's, do they have the skills that I need? Do I know what's expected of me? That's the first arc in the curve. The next is how we are, in fact, ensuring they have what they need to succeed, how they're growing. And then guess what? We tell them. Why does recognition matter? Hey, attaboy. Does anybody feel like they did a good job yesterday? Yeah. It is a human element and brain science to give positive reinforcement back to people. So recognition, Matt, now what it looks like and whether you have a leaderboard and whether it's competitive, I hear that all the time. Well, I don't want people to feel like they're competing. They are competing with themselves or they're competing with others. It kind of depends on your culture. But recognition matters. And then the last chunk in that is actually the incentives that you put in place. Whether that's pay or development, any one of those could be where the cycle gets broken. That is what retains employees. And it starts at the front line of the manager. Whoever is in that first position of authority, all the way up to the CEO, that's where modeling happens, but that frontline manager. So as you're thinking about your workforce strategies and your points of intervention and what's going on in the workplace, think about who has the greatest influence. And how are you turning those individuals into coaches to manage that talent pipeline? That's a piece of what the approach is. Because when you don't, the human side comes in. Because there are unbelievable pressures. And gosh, I've seen this in my career. And it's a lot different now than it was 30 years ago when I started in this space, which is, it is not just internal pressures of time and cost and quality and everything else. You know, at the front end of my career, I'll use the analogy of the IBM Blue. Does that give anybody a visualization of what that might mean? I'll walk like robots. No, I'm a Gen Xer, so I do what I'm told. I'm not a boomer. I'm not saying I know it all, but for my entire career, I've done what I've been told. And I show up and I wear the company flag and all that. It's a very different environment today. Individuals make choices of where they work. They pay attention. Why are people leaving? It could be because they don't know that anybody cares about them. It could be because they don't have, and often pay matters. Don't get me wrong. You have to be competitive, and you're competing with tech firms and everything else. So you can't not be competitive. That is, a woman on my team calls it table stakes. You have to, it's table stakes. You have to have decent pay, or people are going to say. Everything else is within the control of a company to work through. Whether it is, in fact, the recognition that makes somebody proud, the sticker on the hat. I think of Ohio State. My husband's a Buckeye. So I think of how many little, what was that? Oh, very good. Thank you. I'd have stopped and done that if I'd have heard it clearly. But things that symbolize I make a difference are important. The other is how we train them. And that's a solvable thing. Inconsistencies, the comment of junk in and junk out. And then supervisor overload. When you have too many people and you can't get to things, that matters. And in the end, when you focus at the center, customer service, put people in the middle of safety, engagement goes up. When you have a more engaged workforce, you have fewer incidences. When you have a more engaged workforce, you have less turnover. When you have a more engaged workforce, you have better customer outcomes. It's a people-centered approach. It's not about training to an app. Fatigue. Number one issue I am hearing today, and it's a heartbreaking issue to me in the construction industry, is mental health and suicide incidences. There is so much going on, and it is not just what is going on in the plant. It is everything that's going on in the world around them that comes into the plant. And that is a lot, especially for an EHS professional. That's why we call them coaches now. They're not safety cops. They are support mechanisms who can help you from an operations perspective, from a training perspective, from an HR perspective, take a step back and look beyond compliance. And it also isn't just an HR issue. And we know that. I've interacted with a lot of executives in the room today that are running operations. So as you think about leaving this room and everything you're going to gain, do what you do best. Put it in a systems map. Don't just think about the people. Put the people at the center of work, workplace, and workforce. And whatever is that point and pull, bring them through. It could be partnerships. It could be empowering decision making. It could be launching recognition. There are easy steps that get to wins that impact turnover, mental health, ability to engage on the front line, training, feeling valued, and all of these solutions will be a part of it. But it's practice, the role that things like standards and SOPs, I talked a lot about it. It is the impact and influence of technology in the space. And then what is the first place that changed the mindset and the culture for action? So I'm going to leave you with a QR code. I'm happy to answer questions. Back to the Hallmark holiday. If you're not involved in Manufacturing Day, Google it, get engaged, open up your doors. From an ASSP perspective, our commitment is to ungate information, to make it available. I was sharing with the community college, we have great risk assessment content that's out there for free. Things that just help people understand how to do work better. So feel free to reach out after. Training without empowerment is, in fact, compliance. And how many incidences do we have a year? How many fatalities? Yeah, way too many. The data and way too many. Because having seen the generational descendants of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, we cut a branch off somebody's tree. And from an ASSP perspective, work should never impact the ability to go home at the end of the day. Thank you all. A link to link up with me. Happy to talk one-on-one and answer any questions you may have.